Hello everybody, this is Project Alpha, my name is Nikolai Feldman, and you are watching War Diary live with Alexey Arestovich. Hello Alexey. Good evening everybody. It is 1111th day of this war and Russian invasion into Ukraine. It's time to take some stock. Let's look at the Kursk operation. It appears that there is a huge risk that the territory that is being held by Ukraine in Russia's Kursk district does not have much optimism for future holding. Do you think Ukraine should continue keeping it, make an effort to, or what do you think? First of all, Nikolai, let's not pick the words for this situation. It is a very shitty situation there. It's a foobar. It's been there for a week already. It is rather catastrophic, and I'm not going to give too much joy to our enemies. They know what's happening there, I think. The same pattern repeats, the same scenario that we usually run into with our troops, where we make a shitty mistake and then it turns gradually into a screwed up situation and then a foobar. And then finally, from the top of administrative Mount Olympus, there are some notes and some official statements coming down that something is slightly not going well for our troops, and we will probably review our position and our strategy. Usually after that, Syrsky, our Ukrainian chief commander of the army, also known as Zelensky's parrot, comes out and says, no, this is bullshit, we have enough resources and we have control of the situation. Meantime, the officers and soldiers who serve there, they scream in their social media that it is indeed foobar and the whole thing is beyond repair. And sooner or later, it usually ends with us withdrawing from that district, usually withdrawing through a small bottleneck that is being shot through and through by our enemies, where they send their UAVs, and we have to abandon our wounded and dead and equipment and try to seep through that small, narrow bottleneck back to Ukraine territory. And unfortunately, our leadership learns nothing. Look, about a week ago, and during this week, I saw some of your commentary about the fire control of the only logistics road that is used to supply our troops in that district. It appears that nobody made right conclusions at a time. What conclusions do you think need to be made right now in order to save or try to salvage something in this situation? On which level, Nikolai? Well, I don't know. It's difficult for me to even define the level. Not on a strategic, I think. At this point, it's too late. Maybe operative. On the operative level, Nikolai, the group that is realizing the operative command in that area, they will be listening to the Commander-in-Chief. Commander-in-Chief will be listening to our Supreme Commander, and that Supreme Commander is the one holding the strings, Zelensky is. So, okay, what do you think he should have done in this situation? Do you mean Zelensky or... Yeah, Zelensky. So, Zelensky needs to stop doing the bullshit that he usually does. I know it's difficult for him because he's been doing it for the last 6 years, but he needs to gird his loins and come out and acknowledge that political situation demands change, that this operation brought us enough political dividends and was rather successful. But in the moment when the operative situation is threatening to our troops, I take personal decision to withdraw our troops from that district and organize the next defensive position somewhere on the border between Sumy and Kursk districts, let's say. And that fortification should have been organized about, let's say, the operation started in August, so about 5 months ago that fortification should have already been planted there, and it should have been continuously fortified. They should have the main defense areas, secondary defense installations, false defense installations, everything by the book, and what usually Ukrainian army fails to do. David Gendelman, analyst, is usually saying, in regards to these circumstances, the following thing, that Russian army took the good and the bad from the Soviet army, and Ukrainian army seems to have taken only the bad things from the Soviet army. In the Soviet Union, Ukrainian generals would have been probably executed already. At the first error like that, or at the maximum when they repeat it on the second time, they would have been summarily executed. Our heroes, in quotes, they already facing the 15th cauldron of that manner during this war. These are the ones who never change anything. They always stay the course and over again step on the same rakes and end up in the same cauldrons. About a month ago, they should have started taking decisions. When Russians started to break through and starting to cut through our positions, they failed to react to that because Ukrainians never surrender or never withdraw until we are all dead, right? That's our motto. So you have to be proud of that Kursk district operation that slowly becomes a Sumy operation now. And those who are not proud, execute them and send them to Pokrovsk defense. They will be dead very soon. Why not? That seems how we're doing things. All right, Alexey, here's a screenshot from another Telegram channel. The name of this Telegram channel is Employee of the Office of the President. Don't know if that actually is, but they're saying here that you will be surprised what these territories in Kursk district would be exchanged for. That small piece of Kursk district will be exchanged for significant pieces of Ukrainian land. And that was posted just a month ago, 7th of February. By 7th of March, we have a completely different rhetoric. And here's the second part of it on the screen as well. On the Kursk district, everything is set there. General Command is planning a withdrawal. No dates yet. So that change of rhetoric, that I think indicates at the bare minimum that they wanted to exchange this occupied territory for other Ukrainian territories, and we cannot treat this signal as the verified one from the Office of the President. It could have been somebody pretending to be that it comes from the central signal, but still, in your view, that piece of Kursk district, do you think it was planned to be exchanged for something with Russia or traded for something? Well, let's go in an orderly fashion. This channel is being run by Petrov. He is servicing the needs of the Office of the President. Second, I don't know what they were planning there, Nikolai. There should have been a third message in this duel, but we're not seeing it. Let me make that third message. It should say that the moment our general command will withdraw our troops from Kursk district, nothing will end. It will only begin. Russian command has a group there already aggregated. And the question is, what political tasks do they set in front of this group? And if I was Russian command, I would use this opportunity to follow the retreating Ukrainian army, which will be disorganized somewhat at this moment, and continue to get something to gain over on Ukrainian territory. First of all, to finish destroying the retreating enemy, and second, to get some political points, if I was Putin. And in Ukraine, we like to post a question like this. Okay, let's withdraw the troops. And you would what? Go look in the Kremlin and ask them, guys, do not do anything? We're withdrawing. Stay tight and listen to us and do not do anything until we are done. You expect them to behave like this? Do you remember how they were withdrawing their troops from Kiev, Chernihiv, and Sumy districts? And how we were kicking their butt all the way to their territory. And very likely that's what they'll be doing with our troops as they're withdrawing. But they've been doing their retreat in a very organized way. I don't think we will be able to, because they did it at the right time. And I don't think we'll be able to, because we overstayed for 2 months. And when disorganization started to emerge, especially or including the transportation of wounded and dead, and logistics supplies, bringing more munitions to a brigade. I can say that one of the brigades, I'm not going to name it, but a week ago, the whole brigade artillery had only 4 shells left. After that, Sirsky comes out to the cameras and says, you know, we control everything. There is nothing to be worried about. You're just exacerbating the situation. Drink some tea, calm down, everything is good. And that's why Russians will likely be following very weakened and probably disorganized hodgepodge mix of our troops that is difficult to manage even in peace times or when everything is under control. And if Russians are not idiots, they will, let's put it delicately here, probably present us with a significant number of issues on our territory as well. And if this story inverts and they end up capturing something in Sumy district, then what will be the end of this brave political task that was set in front of our troops half a year ago? It will end up by another defeat of the supreme commander of Ukraine, right? And Ukrainian Armed Forces. Why? Because Ukrainian soldiers do not know how to fight? No, they showed really good results. Ukrainian officers do not know how to fight? Of course they can. Ukrainian generals fail to organize things on the operative level? They can to a degree, right? Then why? Because political leadership is posting tasks that are defeating and destroying our army. This is the solution to this riddle. War is a continuation, is an extension of politics. Army is fulfilling the orders of politicians. And our politicians sitting there in the office on Bankova Street, they're making such order, they're giving such orders and setting such tasks that after executing it, our army ends up with being destroyed or having to retreat and having to withdraw. This is the reason. It is not because they do not know how to fight. It is because of the way the tasks are set and the fact that we keep failing to know how to manage cauldrons. If we were withdrawing on time, things would have been different. But our glorious leader is a very unbending and will-powerful, and he is okay facing all the cauldrons in the world. So that's why we do not withdraw. You know, Alexey, what's surprising to me in this story? If a supreme commander of Ukraine probably should have been understanding the difficulty and the fragility of this situation, he probably should have expedited the process of negotiations to change something or to exchange Kursk district for something that they were maybe planning to exchange it for. But this was not happening, and the track of negotiations was prolonged to the maximum degree and was disrupted by the supreme commander himself. Then what's the reason? What's the strategy behind capturing this district? Probably from the first couple months, it was obvious that Ukraine will not be able to hold this territory indefinitely. It is very difficult and problematic to hold. How can one make decisions the way he did in relation to this consideration? I understand that the question may sound incorrect, but I'm trying to find some logic in this whole situation. Well, the logic is very simple, Nikolai. When these people die, the drafting committee will pluck the new ones off the streets. Is it a problem? Well, it's understood that it's difficult to hold this peace forever of Russian territory. Or that's not clear. Clear to whom, Nikolai? To Zelensky? He already answered all questions. That he'll remain stubborn as long as he wants to, and how much Ukraine will pay for that, that's not his business. Especially given that half of Ukraine is giddily supporting him, looking at the posts on the social media. So he probably feels himself in his own element, struggling with Trump, who wants to seize all this activity, hostilities on the front. And the fact that a couple dozen thousand soldiers will be killed or end up missing in action or wounded and maimed, who cares? Well, okay, Alexey, here I want to bring the data from one of the pollings. Extreme Scan did a polling in Russia and Ukraine about the current ongoing phase of preliminary negotiations about ceasefire. On the 26th of February, it was done in both countries, and what's important to note here is that President Trump in Ukraine, before his meeting with Zelensky, was trusted by 15% in Ukraine. After this meeting, only 8% still trust him. However, support to the position of Vladimir Zelensky at negotiations with Trump, 82% are approving, and only 13% are strongly not in favor. Well, Nikolai, these 82% shouldn't be taken with a grain of salt. That means that this data could be skewed. Plus, why should we then worry, right? If 82% think president is okay, then all these people who support President Zelensky in his activities, they should be supportive of his actions in Kursk district. And I guess the logical extension would be for all the mothers of the soldiers who are texting or calling them from that district who are fighting there, saying that, my two best friends are dead. One is wounded and maimed, and we could not evacuate him, and we're running out of bullets and shells. These mothers, who are supportive of Zelensky apparently, should be responding that, Trump is in charge of the difficulties we're facing. Zelensky knows what he is doing. You just sit tight there in the trench and die for the country if the president wants you to, right? If we follow these 82% that are supportive of Zelensky and their logic. Question number 7 from this poll. How do you judge the behavior of Zelensky and his team in the Oval Office? 78% believe in Ukraine that he behaved properly. 16% think that the actions of Zelensky and or diplomatic service have harmed Ukraine. Right. So, Nikolai, when the soldiers are screaming and asking for help, that situation is failing and they cannot control it anymore, you just need to send them the results of this polling, right, instead of ammo. Because what else? There's nothing to worry about. Listen, there is another interesting moment here, and we did not bring it up in our last stream. My fault. But there was a publication a week ago that Zelensky met with Democrats before meeting with Trump in the Oval Office, who advised him to not sign a treaty on the rare earth minerals with Trump. According to Chris Murphy, one of the voices of the Democrats in DC. According to him, Zelensky met with the Democrats before seeing President Trump and J.D. Vance. Do you think that information was already collaborated by anybody? Is it a fact that he met with Democrats? No, I do not know anything about that, Nikolai, but I don't think it changes anything because the decision was made by Zelensky, right? Imagine I'm walking somewhere, then some people approach me and tell me, Alexey, you're going in the wrong direction, think about it. And then I'm contemplating and thinking, okay, well, if you are telling me I'm going in the wrong direction, I probably shouldn't, and I stop. Whose decision is that, right? So he could have said to these Democrats, go F off. I'm going here to sign what I came here to sign. But if he actually listened, and if this event happened and he listened to them, this was still his decision. Not Democrats, not yours, not mine. It was Zelensky's decision to sabotage the negotiation with Trump. Right, I agree, Alexei. He is fully responsible for the outcome. For many years, maybe decades, we've been listening that a huge value in regards to mutual relations of Ukraine and the United States is a bipartisan support, and we need to make sure we maintain this support by any means necessary. It appears that during that meeting in the Oval Office, this value was not exercised, right? Zelensky exercised anything except for this. Right, in the Oval Office, Zelensky thought about anything except for the bipartisan support. I think the Ukrainian delegation came there to throw a scandal and a tantrum. And even if it was not in their analytical part of mind, it was somewhere there, maybe below the waist, and it just sprung out that spring. And as for bipartisan support, Ukraine was never really bipartisan supported in the United States. They've been on the Democrats' tit for about 2 decades already, if not more. And remember, Bush, the Republican president, was suggesting Ukraine to not separate from Russia back in the day. So, yeah, our powers, our authorities were feeding off the Democrats' hand. They were listening to their directives. They were completely integrated with Democrats' organizations and different channels in DC. So even if Zelensky met somebody in the White House and somebody tapped him on his shoulder and managed to change his opinion on his oncoming meeting, I would not be surprised to that. Zelensky doesn't need technically to meet with Democrats. They live in his head. They already made a nice nest in his head, and they have full one-party support in there. That's why he doesn't need to meet with Democrats. He can get a text message from them. It could be some Democratic leader in Washington, D.C., and, let's escalate this. He's sitting bored out of his mind, and he's thinking, well, let me manage something like external politics of Ukraine. I know Zelensky is coming to Washington. Let me send him a text message to make sure that he doesn't agree with anything on Trump, because I'm bored. Let's do something, right? Let's send him a text message. And let's imagine he sends him a text message telling, Vladimir, do you know? And Zelensky looks at that and changes the whole position, changes everything, and then also go to social media and record another video how independent and free we are and nobody can tell us what to do. That could have been how it worked in Ukraine since 1991, since the collapse of USSR. Well, in the same poll, Alexey, I want to say here that they talked to 1,200 citizens in Ukraine, and it was a phone interview. So what else is important to mention? What is more important for Ukraine strategically? Relations with European countries or with the United States? 78% think that with European countries, and only 13% think that mostly with US, and 14% think that both. So European countries, 70% support in Ukraine. Well, we are glaring at a shining truth about the views of Ukrainian people. At least 2,000 of this, 2,800 or however many they interviewed, or 78%, right, 70-something percent, they think that, maybe knowing or not knowing, that we actually do depend on the United States, primarily. They're still believing that we should be aligning with Europe. And when you tell them that Europe last year purchased worth more gas and oil from Russia than they supplied money to Ukraine, these people are telling you that you are running your discussion by Kremlin propaganda. You know how you recognize a Ukrainian patriot? Patriot in Ukraine needs to hate Trump. He needs to hate Arestovich. He needs to support the office of Zelensky. And, of course, he needs to be pissed at Kremlin and China. And he should be very supportive of position of Britain, then not supporting of Britain and aligning himself with Europe, and not aligning himself with Europe, and then again aligning himself with Europe. And then Europe gives us some missiles, and then apparently when we run out of them and still have the debt to pay, we need to start hating Europe again. I think our patriots are on hormonal roller coaster. They look at the news and they don't know how to react to that. And they can keep that opinion for a while. They don't mind the roller coaster. They don't mind following Zelensky on the ups and downs and all the swings of the mood of the office. But the main issue that they have with is causation effects. The reason and effect. This is where our patriot gets torn apart. They just appear to be too toxic for him to understand what leads to what. And this polling, even if it's not too real, it's very symbolic, I think. Because before answering to these questions, they probably were going through this weird change, part of a roller coaster swing. Because they have two different ideas coinciding in their head. First, they scream how horrible Trump is because he behaved somehow wrongly to Ukraine. Okay, but then they're so not caring about the United States. And the next question, if you don't care about the United States, then why do you care about his stance, right? Well, there is a publication in a social media, and Facebook, it made a big splash, that Europe has awoken. with two big exclamation signs behind it, about the program to rearm Europe that would allow Europe to invest 800 billion euros to invest in its defense. Even Hungary and Slovakia signed it with a special emphasis to that. In 25, Ukraine will get 30 billion euros, including 25 from one program and 18 from the frozen Russian assets and the proceeds on them in Europe. Norway is planning to double their support of Ukraine in 25. They will donate over 7 billion euros instead of previously planned 3. This is the biggest military aid to Ukraine sent from Sweden. King of Belgium again accepted Zelensky, and you did comment on 5,000 air defense missiles. Minister of Defense of Canada, Bill Blair, also mentioned that his country is ready to send their troops to Ukraine and are supposedly going to increase their help, as well as Germany. That supposedly is going to provide more aid than the United States in 2025, although Berlin is going through forming of a new coalition based on the recent elections. So a lot of words here in this article, in this news. But what's real besides the Norwegian increase in aid? Well, there are other brave words that are being tossed around, Nikolai. A lot of military bloggers in Ukraine started writing that, guys, why do you worry? We do have our military industrial complex in our garages. We'll build such fantastic products there. We have already built fantastic products there. We have such amazing high-tech devices that we cannot show you right now. They're too secret. That this whole war can be managed from your Kievan apartment via some joystick. And Russia will be defeated, and Trump will crawl on his knees to bloggers like Masha Berlinsky in Ukraine and will apologize for having concerns and not believing their words that Ukraine can rebuild itself and can defend itself. But Masha would be standing there by the window and nobly looking in a different direction, saying that, Donald, I cannot maintain our relations. I do not like you anymore, and everything is over. And then Donald goes on a knee, opens a special box of treasures and offering her additional money, additional military support, and she again turns her face away and says that, look, we can build everything in our garages. We don't need that. And we can substitute 17 intel agencies of the United States with their satellite group. We don't need you. We don't even need Europe, really. Nikolai, I don't understand why, with such heroic activities of Ukrainian military-industrial complex in our garages, we want some money. I would even post a question further. I would say, Europe, you are about to rebuild your military, but you are so weak right now. Let us teach you how to rebuild a military, and we can rebuild your military for you. We have bottomless capabilities in our garages, and we'll teach you how to defend yourself, and we'll give you our own missiles and other munitions that we produce here in Ukraine. That's how you should be posting the question in this regard, if you do believe all that stuff that's floating there. Because Ukraine then is supposedly so strong, so wonderful, and so self-fulfilling and self-sufficient that it will teach the whole world how to fight with Putin. This is why I'm thinking what Patriots are saying, they're only half measures. Looking at that, I'm saying, well, then it appears that Ukraine can actually build a whole new civilization in our garages. Although I know only two historic examples when something was done in garages. First is Israel of 1948, and second is Hamas of 2025. And I'm wondering, whom do we look more like these days? Right. Guys, write it in the commentary. Whom do we look like? We'll read and elucidate ourselves. All right. On this week, we also had Macron with his message to a nation that Russia is a threat to the whole continent. And he did mention that they signed earlier agreements with Russia in 2014, which Russia violated, and they cannot trust Russia to be honest and true to its word again. It is also said that the French are significantly concerned with the existing situation, that the war is not weakening. The United States is still very tumultuous and is going to institute certain tariffs against EU. EU decided to side with Ukraine from the beginning, and they implemented sanctions against Russia. And it is in their interest to make sure this war ends in the favor of Ukraine. It looks like we are entering in the new era of new relationships, international relationships, and suggests to provide their nuclear umbrella for the rest of the Europe. So if indeed this is what he is stating, and basically saying that you cannot trust Russia, we need nuclear umbrella over European Union, and that Russia is a continuous threat, and that Russia is planning to mobilize 3 million soldiers till 2030, that implies that Europe, at least in the view of Macron, needs to switch to military rails and to show an example to the whole Europe how to ramp up their military industrial complex. And who is not doing that, then they probably are not Europe. Don't know if they're siding with Russia or China then. Why do you think this is not what's happening in Europe, in your view? There is a good French saying, probably of the times of the Three Musketeers. I'm not a big connoisseur of French, but I'll try to voice it. Bullshitting is easy. Okay, definitely he said something in French here. Right, Nikolai, so before opening a nuclear umbrella over Europe, one needs to ask whether Europe wants to have nuclear protection, because he did not get the final answer from the countries. For one reason, because the moment you are protected by nuclear umbrella, you become a legit target for another nuclear nation to hit, because this is a nuclear protected territory, and now it's a legit card to play or to attack, perhaps in a preventative nuclear strike. That's why many countries are very hesitant about joining anything nuclear. We talked about similar things here before, but I'll repeat myself again in some earlier streams. If we are fighting a scary Putin who wants to mobilize 3 million people till by 2030, I'm not Macron, of course. I do not speak French, for example, but I would do at least, I would stop purchasing oil and gas from our potential enemy then, right? Because for the money that Russia receives from that is the money they use to build their tanks and to mobilize those soldiers. Second, I would have confiscated Russian assets and I would transfer them to Ukraine or to myself. And I would use the enemy's money. This is the highest level of strategy. I would be rebuilding my defense capability at the enemy's expense. But when Macron, when asked immediately at this press conference whether they will transfer these monies to Ukraine or use them themselves, he answers that no, we cannot, because investors will not really support us then as the country. And instead of building our proper military-industrial complex, we'll probably show to battle with like 4 tanks and 30 people. Right? Europe is different. Europe is complex. I think there will be some pushback on Macron as well, both externally and internally in France. And I'm switching into Ukrainian here. I think what we are discovering here is that our main enemy, with all these hopes and fantasies, is that we're fighting with reality. So all our drones manufactured in our garage military-industrial complex, all the munitions that Europe has, they need to be directed now at reality, because all the trouble is coming from reality. Because everything that we are voicing, everything that we are hoping for in the voices of Macron and the others, and of course Ukraine, it goes very often against reality. Like all the statements we made would be fantastic if they happen in the way we predicted or the way we want to. But reality is against it. So I still don't understand why we are not attacking reality. Because it's important to define your true enemy, right? We're still fighting with Russia. Russia is just a servant of reality. It's basically a proxy war with reality. So let's define the real proxy war and launch nuclear attack on it, perhaps. Advise President Macron to wake up their nuclear forces in France somewhere deep in the night and send them a fiery message that at 1 in the morning, 1:05 in the morning, the whole nuclear trifecta of France needs to attack reality. This is the only way to defend Ukraine. This is the only way to defend France. This is the only way to defend Europe. And after that, he probably needs to say something about the Kingdom of Freedom, but that's probably after the strike. Because that damn reality, it's not listening. I suggest there is another motion for Ukrainians also to take in this regard. Reality needs to be dehumanized. We need to start drawing caricatures at the reality. We need to recruit Charlie Hebdo to draw those caricatures, special forces of France. They can help us with this. What else should we do there? We need to curse the children of reality. We need to be happy for deaths in reality. And we need to be happy when our drones somehow hit the reality and caused it 17% damage. But when we're told, perhaps you can accept reality, we do not need to go into these negotiations. We need first to meet reality in the Oval Office and then create a scandal out of it so that reality would know that you cannot put Ukraine on the knees. And then strategically we'll deceive it anyway. In 3 days, we'll send it an apology letter or write a tweet that we were a little too heated at the moment. And then we go to Riyadh to meet with reality. But even there, everything is not so simple. On the way to Riyadh, we may get another text message from Democrats, and we probably will instigate a new attack on reality. And nothing, I repeat, nothing can enforce Ukrainians to bend our knees in front of reality. What are you thinking about? Take away our sovereignty, the right to choose, the right to stand till the end? Never. So that's why, me personally, when I find the right enemy, my words never split with my deeds. Right now, I following suit here, and I suggest let's announce the war to reality, and I call upon all French and all Ukrainians to join me in the holy war against reality, or multicultural war against reality. That's heavy sarcasm. Did you see the cross falling off from the Lavra, from the church complex in Kiev? This is actually quite symbolical. We're entering in the new reality. And I guess some people in Ukraine hope that our reality is going to prevail over objective reality, so not a single person can say that Ukraine gave up. And at least it may be difficult for us, but it will never be shameful for us, because now we're fighting the main enemy, reality. And I suggest we cut all the cause and effect relations here. Just flank them and attack them on the flank. Same as Russians attacked our positions in Kursk. And then that reality will have nowhere to run. It will be in the cauldron, it will disintegrate, lose command, and losing dead and wounded will slither away and withdraw. And we will probably catch up with it and enforce it to surrender. And we'll sign some agreements with it, that reality will promise to serve only us and our ideas. That's how real men put the matter, and not that some Russia, we're fighting with somebody there, some reparations. We need to fight with reality. Why do we fight with Russia? This is weakness. A man is not the one who knows how to fight, but the one who knows whose enemy is. Seems like our enemy is objective reality. Oh, Alexey. We probably have been analyzing Europe and all the events happening there for quite a while here. And it's strange to me that so many people here are not paying attention to the content of what Europeans are saying and what they're doing in our regard. Whether we have very short memory or we indeed want to present the wants for reality and pacify ourselves with illusions. So, what do you think? How long this will last? Where do you think we will have the meeting with reality? What needs to happen in order for the reevaluation to occur? Let's follow the patterns, Nikolai, here. Let's follow big patterns in the individual, collective, subconscious. We're seeing the same scenario, both on the levels of big politics and on the level of individual hotheads and patriots. I apologize. Okay, look, Zelensky brought the country to its knees right now. It's a very demolished country. People also bring themselves to demolition and self-destruction, trying to avoid acknowledging that their pathway is leading to nowhere. It is the work of ego, the work of fear of losing the invented identity, which never really existed to begin with, and irrational stubbornness is also a national feature for Ukrainians. And it leads us into a trap, which we cannot evade without a threat of loss and severe losses, both material and physical, and any other aspect. We're repeating the same mistake in Solidar, in Bakhmut, everywhere. Mistakes are everywhere. Mistakes happen. You cannot fight such a huge continental war without making mistakes, and mistakes do happen. But even if the worst mistake is acknowledged, it stops repeating itself. But the mistake that is being denounced has all potential to become a catastrophe. Both Zelensky and Syrsky and the Patriots could have stopped way earlier, but their ego does not allow them to. And now them and us and everybody are consuming the consequences of not only their mistakes, but also their stubbornness, their personal stubbornness, their politics, the same principle, the same Ukrainian pattern. The same psychological mechanisms work in the scale of the country and the scale of individual heads. And now Ukrainians have and in Europe, by the way, the same mechanisms work. And now we can see that there is no independence from reality, regardless of how hard you try. And now a question here. We are writing these streams every week, right? And I have a big urge to perhaps stop doing it because it's impossible to save those who don't want to save themselves. We can try to speed up their cognition, but it's a futile war. These both processes need to reach their critical point. We will continue writing, recording these streams for those people who understand that mistakes were made, who are trying to remedy them. They need to continue observing and fixing the situation in accordance with reality, how things work and which patterns work. And Ukrainians have to learn and actually see that and cognite on this, that we've done that in the 16th century, in the 17th century, at the beginning of 20th century, now in 21st century, and it leads us every single time to the same result. Human stubbornness, it's very visible now, is the force that doesn't like compromise. It either builds when the goals are positive, or it destroys. And Ukrainians en masse can build apparently only in the garages, right? Those patriots that we're talking about now. Why are we fighting the continental warfare and playing big politics when your technical and stubbornness level is at the garage level? And your understanding is also there. If you are going to play big games, you need first to change the type of thinking and start to look at things differently. When our director of Monobank starts a fundraiser for nuclear arms, when our congresswoman saying that we can substitute with our own intel the work of 17 intelligence agencies and satellite networks of the United States, when they're saying that we can hold and continue fighting this war because we can assemble things in our garages, when Macron is saying that they'll send hundreds of billions of euros to Ukraine, which they cannot even find for their own army, the person is facing a choice, whether he or she chooses to believe that voluntarily, or the person understands that he is being fed existential lies at this moment. So if the person wants to believe in it and continue down this path, then what, Nikolai? Oh, the person is to bear the responsibility, right? Exactly. The person is to bear the heaviest responsibilities from this war. Not from the beginning of war, not for decision to start it, that's on Putin, but for exacerbating and continuing this pain. This is actually a very Ukrainian thing, to continue to resisting till the end, to avoid acknowledging that you are actually wrong. Anything, but I'm not wrong. Now we'll try to squeeze some logic out of this, out of our statements. We'll try to explain that this is a difficult term that we need to go through to see something at the end. This will be the repetition of the same old story in Ukraine. And it costs lives of soldiers who are trying to withdraw now from Kursk at night by small groups. And it costs dearly to everybody. And the most dear cost will be paid by those who have these illusions. But Ukrainians are very stubborn. We do have this motto, right? We die, but we, in this case, do not acknowledge our mistakes. Well, then you die. Everything is very simple. Look, Alexey, this all sounds very tragic on one hand. On the other, I don't want to repeat myself saying that we do have some hope for Europe, which we continue mentioning in all examples of news. My friends, sorry for interrupting you. We see that publicly there are no actions that can tell us that Europe takes any responsibility for Ukraine, and Ukraine can actually rely on Europe in any format. What is responsibility for Ukraine, Nikolai? Let's take one small aspect as an example. Air defense systems covering Kiev and other cities of Ukraine. Russian Federation is using ballistic weapons against us. European complexes that European army has that are manufactured by Europe without American components, because America, if there is a single part from America, they can block the use of that weapon. European arms cannot shoot down ballistic missiles. It's only American Patriot complexes that can fight this. Wise economic and political figures in Europe are saying that we do not need relations with US. We need to concentrate in Europe. Well, dear sirs, when ballistic missiles will start falling on your schools, kindergartens, houses, remember everything that you've been writing in those social media. You're the ones who begged for these ballistics to fall on your heads. Okay, let's correct here. The decision to use the ballistics is made by Putin, but you did make a decision that would make impossible for you to intercept it and to shoot it down, because Americans apparently are not an ally now, and you want Europeans to do it. Europe does not have air defense systems capable of intercepting Russian ballistic missiles. And this is just one small example. You can rely on Europe as much as you like. Just don't complain that you cannot intercept ballistic missiles. Oh, right, I forgot. You're fighting cause and effect relations here. Why am I appealing to you? Arestovich is a traitor, right? He is such a traitor. He declared a war to reality, and now he's talking about not looking at reality. Well, that's our analysts in brief. That's whom we're working with. CNN is saying that the stash of Patriot missiles may run out in several weeks. After the United States stopped supporting Ukraine militarily, Ukraine may run out of Patriot missiles. So I understand that it's probably doesn't make sense to ask you whether it's true or not, but let's assume that this is so. So several weeks, right? Let's say it's 4 or 5 weeks, not as 2 or 3 weeks. Let's everybody feel at least a month of safety. 5 weeks. This is still a very short time frame. So how do we calculate? Riyadh and some agreements that are happening there, perhaps they will go successfully and things will be signed. But we also have unannounced publicly position. Apparently it exists though. Bild is publishing a hint at Trump probably not returning military aid even after signing an agreement in Riyadh if Zelensky does not go into resignation mode. There are different reasons named there, but let's acknowledge that after the fight in the Oval Office, there probably will be no friendship. There, it's difficult to return trust in this circumstance. In your logic, these 5 to whatever weeks, how will it go during this time frame?
I think in Riyadh, Nikolai, they will be talking about cessation of long-range arms across the border between Russia and Ukraine, and they'll try to just keep the war at the conventional short-range arms on the front. They'll probably try to limit the use of UAVs and missiles, because we understand how limited our air defense systems are. We cannot hold Russian aerial attacks. I don't know what we need to exchange that with Russia, but given that Trump is pushing on both Russia and Ukraine and does want to strike truce, and Zelensky and Putin do not want to strike the truce, then Trump will have to solve this three-body problem when two bodies are running in different trajectories. It's a complex task, but let's see how he succeeds in doing it. And they'll be discussing, from what I understand, right, the American taxi drivers, that they will be discussing long-range weapons in Riyadh and just keeping the war on the front line. If they fail to agree on that, and Russia will continue hitting the depth of Ukraine with their ballistics and UAVs, we will not have means to shoot it down. What's the reason for Russia, Alexey, to go for this agreement when using ballistic missiles is actually their strong side? To limit the use of Ukraine's drones on their targets? Well, Nikolai, they will likely exchange that for some political result. I remind our viewers that war is an extension of politics by other means, and the goals of this war are political. If the goals of this war are to be achieved without use of armed forces, then you don't need that, right? You perhaps can save all these ballistics for the future war, I don't know, with Macron, or to restart the war with Ukraine at some point. So why not to seize it for some period, if we're talking truce at the moment? They can, I think. At least it is in the agenda. Whether it will be realized, we don't know. But after stoppage of American aid to Ukraine, our capabilities to even shoot down Shahed UAVs are very limited, because intelligence for our air defense systems is not transferred anymore. And look how Trump is weaving this story. The moment we actually start to work, the moment we go to Riyadh, we present our readiness for negotiations, and we're saying that we're going to negotiate, he starts to send signals with more optimism, saying that, well, okay, we can restart our intelligence support, and maybe we can restart aid. The moment we start being stubborn again, new messages surface up that perhaps, no, it's impossible, maybe, to restore that service at the moment. And you can follow American signs to understand the behavior of our leadership in Ukraine. The moment we are being dumb is when, and uncooperative and stubborn is when you see pessimistic notes coming from US government, and the moment we are cooperative is when we see the optimistic notes. What people and independent observers cannot grasp here. Another matter is, why do we not ask of Britain? Why do they not support Ukraine in the same format? They were also co-signers in Minsk Accords, and they are not letting us use Taurus missiles and Storm Shadows on certain targets. And Zelensky is taking pictures with King of Britain and still friendly with them. And when we really, really needed those Storm Shadows to realize our operative tasks on Russian warehouses and airfields during repelling of Kharkov operation, the Brits never gave us those missiles, when we actually could have destroyed those planes. These glorious Brits that supposedly support us never gave us these weapons. So Trump is in the office to review the agenda of Democrats altogether, summarily. He's changing the course of the whole country. Why does he need to fulfill the agreements that are not in his interest? And Ukrainian businessmen who are complaining about the reality to me, they're telling that they're being ransacked by government. The enforcement agencies are taking the last money from the companies, and after that they write in the social media praise to Zelensky, and they attack Arestovich in public while still appealing to me in private. And they praise Zelensky for not bending, not giving up. This regime is attacking you, dear businessman. It's bending you over, and you still support it publicly. And the only desire of Trump is to stop this war in regards to Ukraine and give Ukraine a chance to rise. Trump doesn't understand perhaps the position of Putin completely. And I think we are also missing some of it. And I understand that Putin may be trying to deceive Trump to bind us with some Minsk III, disarm us, and qualitatively prepare the ground for the next round of this war. So what? Okay, in this story, if Putin is so horrible, and I acknowledge that he might be, what will Trump do when he understands that Putin deceived him? He'll probably retaliate in some fashion, right, Alexey? Well, knowing Trump, Nikolai, he will be doing a lot of things that no other American president has done ever. And right now, we don't need to call him names and to withdraw our 12% of his support in our society down to 8, but actually support him and make sure that he is on our side when Putin deceives us again. We instead are trying to quarrel with him, so when the time comes that Putin acts, we may have to face Trump, who says, you know what, you've been so stubborn and horrible, and how you treated me when I really wanted to help you, I don't think I want to help you now. That's why I think we still have to attack dirty reality with a dirty nuke or something. Otherwise, we will not succeed, because I think brain is at premium in this country until somebody brings them artificially from outside. According to literary authors, our land is plentiful and trees are growing and crops are growing. We just don't have water in it. Come and rule it. You know what, Nikolai? I never thought that I will be, since I'm a fan of psychology, right? I never thought I'll have a chance to observe how tens of millions of people will be losing their mind live on air. A lot of well-known people are just crumbling in front of our eyes, but they continue to be stubborn in what destroys them. As in that anecdote about the hedgehogs crying, getting hurt and by pins, but continued to hump the cactus. All right, Alexey, in the logic of this potential reformatting and change of power in Ukraine, Tymoshenko did seem to receive the ball that was seemingly given to her via the publication in Politico, the way I'm reading the signals, when Tymoshenko appealed to Rada, Ukraine Congress, when she criticized the opinion that the war needs to continue for another 5 years. I think she is receiving the ball here. Do you think the coalition under these initiatives and decisions by Tymoshenko, do you think she has support in the Congress, or that coalition is still being formed, or it will never be formed? Well, it's not so easy to form such a coalition, Nikolai. You need to lobby the congressmen and rent some, or pay the money. But okay, if they have resource, they could. Perhaps they get a coalition, they re-elect the speaker, and Zelensky probably will not be sitting and waiting there. He'll probably be acting while things are happening. And since this coalition is still targeting his removal, whether voluntary or involuntary, if he steps away, the situation changes drastically and everything becomes much easier and more straighter. The problem is not in readiness of Tymoshenko. The problem is in Zelensky holding onto his throne, and nobody knows, even Trump, how to peel him off this throne. And how much of support percent does Zelensky have? I don't know, but probably high, looking at the madness in social media, because people are winking at each other but still supporting Zelensky. He's holding the throne even more after that support and wants to leave even less. This story has another remarkable element to it. Yulia Vladimirovna reacted to an opinion, the real opinion of Europeans that she knew, she understood, because Macron is saying what is favorable for him as a politician, and the head of military intelligence in Germany is saying what is understood by him and his ministry. He is not sugarcoating it. And the Ministry of Defense of Germany recently said, well, sure, let Ukraine fight Russia till 2030. It's their thing. That's the real attitude of Europe to this war. They get benefits from our refugees, white Christians coming to their countries, well-educated, good citizens. And meantime, they can give us a little bit here and there, some arms, some money, some missiles that maybe can shoot the UAV down, but for our money and as a credit. And their speeches are so beautiful on the level of presidents, but then the head of their military intel in Germany came out and just blatantly laid it out, what they really think. So that Ukraine would fight till 2030, suffer another 2 million dead, and having lost everything till on the left bank of the river. And for them, it's advantage. You know, what I also wanted to remark here in the stream, that Russians are behaving as if they already won. This is laughable, by the way. The only group that is funnier than Ukrainians is Russians, who already think that Russia has won in this war. We talked about that, and I want to reiterate once again that with all our deficiencies, with all our dummities and dislike of reality, if we prevail the effectiveness of if we lift up the effectiveness of our governmental management by 15%, Russian offense will stall. This is the difference of efficiency. Their efficiency is rather low. And then we can negotiate on very different terms in the next agreement. The problem with all that, and the key to all that, is Zelensky. He is destroying everything that he touches. Zelensky is extremely ineffective. And if you still believe in Zelensky as effective leader, go talk to soldiers, who maybe will be lucky to get out of Kursk district alive. If you still believe in Zelensky's efficacy, look at the 100 billion out of what, 250 billion order for Ministry of Defense that we already paid. Ministry of Defense has funded, but the industrial complex did not deliver for 100 of that. Is it corruption or issues with production? Over a third of orders paid for by Ministry of Defense out of your money that you managed to somehow pay to the budget during the war was not delivered in 24 to Ministry of Defense. Services paid for but never rendered. If you think that around such a leader we need to unite instead of asking him to leave, I don't know how to help you. If you like that, I don't know how I can help you with this. If you think that this is the way it should be, I don't think anybody can help you. As long as he is in power and as long as you support him. End of the first hour.